want to kind of understand because, you know, as you've seen, there's been a lot of like demonization of the real estate agent broker, right? Everybody feels like, oh, well, you just open the door and you're not really doing anything and you get
I
this fat
close
check.
it too and I lock it. Like I don't understand. Like what do you mean? I just open it? You think it's leave it open and leave? No. We man. No, really though. It's funny. It's like, and I've been saying to people, I'm like, yeah, right. So a couple things. One, I completely understand, right? I think that you are an outlier. I'm a little bit of an outlier, but it is a profession that tends, let's be honest, to lend itself to like douchebags, right?
Yeah.
So let's be
Yeah.
honest, right?
There's
And
used car salesmen and douchebags or whatever in the game that
I
don't
think
provide.
I think 80, just like every other profession, whether it's
Yes.
right, like 80%, right? So it's like teachers, right? It's like, and I did an
Right.
interview with Spectrum One the other day, and I get on the Zoom, and she goes, "I've never had a good experience with a broker, and none of my friends have ever had good experience." I'm like, "Oh, cool. Like, how do you start the interview? Like what? You know?" And I was just like, well,
Right.
like, I was like, look, K through 12, I probably had 5 good teachers, right? K through 12. Yeah, man. No, but yeah, it's the demonization. I think the shows don't help. I don't watch the shows,
Right.
but I don't think they help because from what I've seen, I mean, these people don't have 2 brain cells to rub together. It's all scripted. It's all performative. But like, people are like, oh my God, what people have in their minds is that we make millions of dollars and that it's very
Right.
easy,
Right. They
right?
have no idea. And you're right. The TV shows don't the TV shows are just not reality. I used to tell people that all the time. Go
The
wrong.
first time that I had a buyer, I brought a buyer to a listing that, uh, okay, whatever, who cares? Ryan Serhant had, right? And this was the first time I'm meeting him, and people are like, oh,
Mhm.
like you're going to Ryan's listing? Like, he ain't going to show up. First showing, he doesn't show up, right? He goes to the first meeting with the seller and is like, yeah, I'm on TV. He's like a pull string dog. He's all high energy, right? And then he disappears. You don't see him again. He has someone show it. Usually they're attractive and he gives them 20% and he keeps
Right.
80, right? But when they were about to like actually buy it, this was in Dumbo in 2017, he showed up.
Okay.
So he like was on the email was like, yeah, I'll be there tomorrow. I'm like, oh, so like I'm watching clips of the show, so I have something to talk to him about, right? Because I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
Okay, right? Because I think that I'm about to go talk to like the Warren Buffett of real estate. Like I don't understand, you know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
people always ask me because I've sold $6 million apartments and I've rented $1,200 apartments. The only difference in my mind, the guy selling the $1 million listing guy, better haircut, more
Right.
expensive watch, more expensive
Right.
suit, same asshole.
Right.
So
Right.
right, like it really is, right? It's just so
Basically.
so
Yeah.
so I'm like trying to talk to him, and it's like everything. It was so uncomfortable because I brought up the fact that I guess I watched YouTube clips of the show. He moved to Brooklyn. I'm like, oh, you moved to Brooklyn? He don't even look up. He's like, nah, that's just for the show. I still live in Tribeca, but it's good for business. Like he's like doesn't even look up. I'm like, all right,
One of
word,
those.
right? So then he's on his phone and he goes, oh hell yeah. I go, oh, you got good news? Yeah, these buyers from Asia. I've been working with them for 4 years. He says they finally are in contract for 50 million.
Mm.
I'm like doing the math in my head, like, yo, this guy just made $1 million,
Yeah.
right?
Basically.
So I'm like, wow. So I'm like, oh, that's amazing, right? So anyway, the next day I see him on social media and he's like jumping up and down on his G Wagon, right? And he looks in
Yeah.
the camera like Jordan Belfort and he goes, these buyers from China saw me on TV. They DM'd me. 72 hours later, we're in contract for 50 million. Boom. That's how it's done. I'm
Right.
like, bro, you told me it took 4 years yesterday,
Right.
okay? But right,
Right.
let's be honest. Never let the truth ruin a good story. If he was in
100%.
the camera, like, yeah, man, I was pulling my hair out with these buyers. It took 4 years. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to hear that shit.
That doesn't sell. That's not sexy. You know what I mean? So,
Not sexy. So
but
that's
that
not. Yeah,
just to your point, that feeds into the idea that real estate agents, it's very quick. It's very, deals never fall apart. You don't deal with anything. You don't show people a million houses or a million apartments and nothing. There's so many
and then
things
they
you got.
call you and say, "Oh, we saw something without you, and we bought it." And you're like, "The fuck."
Exactly, exactly. Or you know what? I
Like,
decided I'm
yeah,
gonna move. I'm gonna move to Wyoming or whatever, and I'm
yeah.
just gonna buy a
Kanye
ranch.
inspired me. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know what I mean. So Meanwhile, you show them 100 things and they're gonna move on. So
Yeah, I mean, look, that like I just said, a good close rate is 18%. That means if you take out 10 people, less than two of them are renting with you. The
right.
other eight people you took out, you went from a cab from A to B, and you paid for this. You got them a coffee. You
Yep.
spent Saturday and Sunday with them, and then you never heard from them again.
Yep. Yep. And people don't understand that part of it. You know what I mean? So when you get into Douglas Elman and obviously, like I said, you're rocking and rolling number one 6 years in a row. So
Well, it
I
didn't
want
start
people to
that way. It didn't start
well,
that way.
sure, and I want people to understand that. That's why I wanted to talk about that because I wanted people to understand what is the grind like when you're working with in the rental market because people don't understand that. I think people, like I said, most of the shows are based around buys and sells, right? They're not really
Which
based
is
around
actually more boring. Like if they followed me around the last 5 years, that's a show, man. Holy shit. You know what I mean? Landlords,
right.
people, holy
Yeah,
hell, yeah. Because I
especially in
do,
New York.
I started with like just tenant representation. Now I represent a lot of landlords, developers, whatever you want to call them, owners. And,
Yeah.
that's still very difficult because you have to manage these personalities, and these people are very cutthroat. They have 100 people calling them a day trying to represent their
Hmm.
property, right? Why are they
Right.
going to give it to you? How hard do you have to work, right? So my dream when I used to say, so, I grew up with just my dad when I was very young. My mom passed, and he's a hard ass. He's from Iran. And I used to call him and say to him when I first started, if I could just get one exclusive, like represent one building, oh my God, right? Like I was telling him, right? And then now I have a 45 buildings that I represent the owners. And it's like, it's
Nice.
never lost on me. Every day I wake up like, yo, like, how did I
Yeah.
get here? Right. I think
Yeah.
about it, right? It's not lost
Yeah.
on me. I don't feel cocky about it. I feel like at any moment it could all disappear, you know? But I started out tenant rep. Worked when I was at Triplement, there was this truck, all right, I got to be politically correct here. He came from a very wealthy family, and he was a
Okay.
broker. Now, there's
Okay.
two or three different types of brokers, just like there's two or three different types of finance bros, right? There's
Yeah.
the one that probably grew up not so rich, saw his parents struggle, like a lot of my family escaped Iran, etc., and was like, all
Hmm.
right, I got to make it. I want to make it, right? And then, of course, you have the people who their father went to Princeton and their father's father went to Princeton, and they get a nice
Right.
job right away. There's that in real estate too. Like there's a
Right.
lot of that in real estate, right? The circle is small, right? But
Hmm.
then you have the hustlers, the people who hustle to get there. And
Hmm.
these are the people that you don't want to face, right?
Right.
Because it's like we work three times as hard, right?
Right.
You play the hand you're dealt, right? Like
Yeah.
they always say there's people who are born on third base and think they hit a triple,
Right. Right.
right?
Right. No, that's the
So
truth.
so
That's the
it's
truth.
like
Yeah.
so that was the thing. So I worked with this kid, and basically I just wanted to learn, right? And I think there's the saying: anytime somebody comes to you and says this will be a good learning experience, prepared to not get paid.
Right.
So he's like, I'll give you 30%. So I lived on 28th and 9th. It used to be called, it's called mutual redevelopment housing. I mentioned this,
Hmm.
and he had this exclusive on 25th and 9th with this, which is technically Chelsea, and he didn't want to
Yeah.
do the work. So I did all the showings, right? So I go
Okay.
to Element and I call the owner. This is a true story. I go to Element. I call the owner. I say, hi. I call the office. My name is Keon Sinai. I just switched to Element. I've been renting your apartments. And he says, so and so, Nick so and so rents my apartments. Click. Okay, fine. 4 months goes by. I guess this guy had gone to rehab for the fifth time. I don't know. Like, I'm not trying to be funny. Like, whatever. He just wasn't doing a good job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's like this, you're being born with a silver spoon is a gift and a curse, I guess. So the owner calls me and goes, okay, I'm going to give you a shot. I'm going to give you a 5-day exclusive on one apartment. And if you can rent it, I will give you another one. So
It's a
I
shot.
rented it.
Yeah.
He gave me one more. Eventually, he gave me the building.
Got it.
Eventually. And that was my first building, right? So I was so excited. I was over the moon. And immediately people were trying to get in my head. They're like, oh, you got 400 West 25th Street? You should reach out to the owners of these buildings. And I remembered something that Tom Brady talks about, right?
Hmm.
He said when he worked with a sports psychologist at Michigan, he went to the sports psychologist and said, I'm not starting. A sports psychologist said, starting? You're not even starting in practice. Like, perfect 3 snaps, and then
Right.
we'll talk about you starting in practice, right?
Right.
So long story short, I was like, nope, I'm just going to focus on doing a good job on this building. And
Yeah.
9 years later, that snowballed. I do all this guy's buildings now. He only owns four of them. I worked for his brother-in-law. Word got
Yep.
around. So my thing was always like, I'm going to work super hard and be super focused, and it
Right.
will come, right? And it might take a
Yeah.
month, it might take a year, but it will come. And
It'll come.
that's the thing where it's like I perfected one building, I got another. I perfected. I wasn't. There's a saying in Farsi: when you try and catch two rabbits at once, you don't catch either of them.
Right. Right.
So I just
Exactly.
focused on killing it for this guy.
Yeah.
And he's launching a building called the Royce on 38th and 8th, 90 units. Luckily, I pitched for it. I mean, I was hoping he would use me. I got it right, and that all started, but from a 5-day exclusive. Nobody takes a 5-day exclusive. Trust me. It
Right.
takes three
Yeah.
days to get it, to take photos, to get them
Of
back, to put it
course.
on the market. I
Of
was just like,
course.
I was like, I'm in, right? I went and
I'll do
snapped
it.
photos with my iPhone. I was putting them on all these different websites and just, I got
Hmm.
someone in. He's like, how'd you do that? I said, I just outworked everybody.
Well, it's good quality. It's good quality work, and your goal was not to, let me just see who else what other agent I can just have go run over there, and while I don't do work, it's like you work hard to get in position, and then you truly can put a good team together. But the
Sure.
foundation is
Yeah.
actual
I
real
didn't, I
hard
didn't
work.
have anyone besides myself for the first like 8 years, right? Like I didn't have an
Yeah,
admin. It's like, but preparation meets, they always say, preparation meets opportunity, right? And that's what
out
happened.
of here.
Preparation
Yeah,
met opportunity. Um, and like you said, there's a lot of demonization of real estate brokers, but
yeah,
the average rental agent in Manhattan makes 65,000 a year. Like, is that who
yeah.
we're going after? You know what I
Well,
mean?
yeah. I mean, that's essentially who they're going after. I mean, the average. I mean, the average agent, like we talking on the Jersey, taking on the Jersey side, is probably maybe less than that. You know what I mean? But